Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. So inflation is the thing that we really talk the most about, kind of the most about, and it seems that it's sort of the hardest thing that for students to get. Okay. And that's why I wanted you to try to be here so you could ask questions. And maybe as you listen to me explain it, it becomes a little bit easier, right? I think this cartoon does a good job of sort of explaining what's going on. Inflation is just a rise in the level of prices, right? Things are getting more expensive, right? And so if you think prices, and we've already talked about this a little bit with demand, right? If you think the prices are going to be higher in the future, you're going to want to try to spend now, right? And that's kind of what the cartoon's saying, right? Use the dollar by now so you don't suffer from inflation. So, uh, and there you can see the cartoon there as well, right? Inflation is a drag on the consumer, right? We lose purchasing power. It's harder for us to buy things when prices go up. Okay, so three important definitions related to inflation. The first one is inflation itself, which is a rise in the general level of prices. Okay, some prices could be going up, some prices could be going down, but overall, prices are going up. Okay, so that's inflation. Deflation is going to be prices falling. And ironically enough, or counterintuitively, deflation is not a good thing either, which we'll see at some point as well. Right? We don't want prices to go up, but we don't want prices to go down either. And then we have a third one. We don't talk a whole lot about it, but it's definitely worth knowing, which is disinflation. And this is trying to not move us to deflation, but try to slow down the pace of inflation, right? Make inflation not happen so quickly. Okay? So those are the three definitions. We mainly talk about inflation, but you should understand deflation too. They're just opposites. Okay, so let's look at a scenario here. Okay? So someone you know makes $20 a week and they have two things that they like to buy. They buy gas, which costs $2 a gallon, and they buy lattes, which are $4 a cup. So if she spent all her money on gas, and this is not a comparative advantage, I know we're talking about spending, this has nothing to do with that. Okay, but I was looking at it earlier and I'm like, it kind of looks like that, but it's not, right? So she can buy 10 gallons of gas, she can buy five lattes, right? And if she's gonna get a latte, she gives up 2 gallons of gas. That's not what's really super important about this. So let's think about what happens, right? What happens if the price of gas doubled and the price of lattes doubled? She's not going to be able to buy as much as she could, right? She's making the same amount of money, but the economy that she lives in is experiencing inflation. What happens, though, at the same time if her income doubled as well, right? So she makes $40 a week, but everything else doubled as well, right? Think to yourself, what do you think is going to happen? Hopefully, you said nothing, right? So it doesn't matter if prices go up in relation to your wages or your income, right? Nothing real has changed, right? She feels the same way as she did before. And this is something that I'll continue to say. I have a little song for you in a minute. I'm not going to sing it, right? And so I always like to say, real is how you feel, right? Because we're going to talk about what's happened to her real income when prices have doubled at the same time. Nothing, right? So she feels the same. So her real income has stayed the same. Now, let's look at another example. Now, pretend the price of gas doubles and the price of lattes doubled, but her income stays the same, right? Now she can only get half the amount that she could get before. What happens now to her purchasing power? She's still walking around with that $20 bill. She's still making the same amount of money, but how does she feel? Hopefully, you're saying to yourself, wow, she feels like she's a little bit poorer, right? She can't buy the things she used to buy with the same amount of money, right? She feels poorer. Again, real is how you feel. So, what has happened to her real income? That $20 is the same, but her real income has decreased. She feels poor. Remember when I talked about with GDP, real, right? Real GDP, what do? We factor in prices. That's what real wages and real income do, right? They factor in prices. So this is my favorite part. You guys ever heard of Patrice Rushen? I'm gonna listen to this for a minute. The song is called Feel So Real. You know what they say, the weirder something is, the easier it is to remember. So hopefully this makes you remember. Real is how you feel. This must be, I don't even know what year this is from. But so let's look at the questions as the music plays in the background. So I'm not keeping you here forever. So real values are always adjusted for prices. If your income stays the same and prices go up, what's going to happen to your real income? It's going to fall. What happens if your wages stay the same and the prices go up? Your real wages are going to fall. Okay? So again, prices cut into real values. Higher prices, you feel poorer. Real is how you feel, so your real wages, your real income falls. I can't stress how important this is. And for some reason, this becomes something really hard for students to get. Okay? And this is another one of those things that is intuitive, right? Think about what happens when everything's more expensive. You don't feel as rich as you did or as good as you did about things. So here we go. Feel so real. I love Patrice, but we'll move on because this is your time. Oh no. There we go. So, costs of inflation, right? Inflation doesn't only inflict costs on your purchasing power, there are other costs involved. The first one is called shoe leather costs, right? What happens when things get more expensive? What do you try to do, right? You try to look around for cheaper things. That's what shoe leather costs are, right? So maybe you go shopping, you have to go to 5 places to look for the better price, okay? And the idea is as you're running around town, it's wearing down the leather on your shoes. So shoe leather costs is another way of saying search costs, okay? The next one, menu costs. I have some great pictures to show you. I'm not going to post them on Instagram, but I'll show you in class tomorrow, right? But maybe you've seen, I always associate this with like those family style Italian places. Maybe like Steve's Pizza actually had this, the one down in like Palmetto Bay, where they put little stickers over their menu items, right? Why do they do that? Because they don't want to reprint a menu every time prices change, right? That gets expensive. So the menu costs or the costs that are associated with changing your menus, making sure your customers know prices have changed, right? That's not something that people want to do. And then finally, the last one, and this is, something you've maybe heard. It's always the stereotypical thing your grandparents say, right? Back in my day, you could buy a brand new Cadillac for what it cost to mail a letter, right? That's unit of account costs, right? It's money is not an accurate way to describe things anymore because things have gotten so expensive. I posted a little indicator in your GDP inflation unemployment assignment. Things in Venezuela, inflation has gotten so bad they can't even talk about it with prices. And so they've come up with a unique way of trying to determine what things are valued at. So if you're from Venezuela or this sounds interesting to you, it's like a 10-minute long thing, but it's pretty interesting what creative ways Venezuela came up with to deal with inflation. All right, then we're going to look at this inflation and interest rates. We'll talk about this more later. This is one of those things that I'm just kind of like planting the seed. So when you hear about it later, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Interest is the price of money, right? I'm not just going to give you $100 and let you borrow it for free. I'm going to say, here's $100. I want you to pay me back at 10% interest, right? But what happens if you pay me back at 10% interest, but prices go up 10% also? Have I gotten anything back for my money? No, it stayed the same, right? So the real interest rate, you need to take the nominal interest rate minus inflation. So if inflation is 3%, we think prices are going to go up 3%. And I want 10% return on my money, right? I'm going to give you $100, but I want 10% real return. What should I charge you? Hopefully you've said to yourself, 13%. Again, to get the real interest rate, right, we're looking at inflation, what inflation does, right? And again, that's real values are always accounting for inflation. And then finally, I think this is the last slide. Who is helped and who is hurt by inflation? And what are some things that make people unaffected by inflation? So, the people that are hurt by inflation are people that receive a fixed income, right? And again, just think about what we just talked about. I make $1,000 a month. Every month I make $1,000. What happens when prices start to rise? That $1,000, even though it's the same, the amount, the nominal amount is the same, it's worth less and less because of inflation. Savers, people that save money, right? I take $10 and put it under my bed every day. What happens when prices go up? That money's not worth the same thing that it used to be, right? And creditors, lenders, right? If I lend you $100 today and you go buy something with it and you pay me back in 2 months, what's happened to the money I get back if inflation's taken place, right? I lose. So an easy mnemonic is lenders lose, right? Lenders lose. Who's helped by inflation? Borrowers, right? If I give you money today and you buy something, what happens if prices rise? The money you pay me back, while you're still paying me back the same amount, it's not worth as much, and the money you borrowed is technically worth more, right? And the mnemonic there, borrowers benefit, right? Lenders lose, borrowers benefit. Now, what are some things that help this out? If you have a cost of living adjustment, right? So people that get Social Security, for example, right? They get a cost of living. So the government says, we expect prices to go up 1.3% every year. So every year they get 1.3% more. So what happens with their check? Are they losing? No, because they've built in the inflationary expectations. Okay?